Okay, wow, you've really dug deep for this deep dive. I mean, we're talking wisdom, the higher self, even like the very essence of creation. It's all right here in this book. Awakening wisdom, higher self, spirit, and creation's pillars.
Yeah, it's a really cool mix of different philosophies and spiritual traditions, like even some Buddhism and theosophy.
Right. And something that really jumped out at me, it says that negative emotions, they could be like messages from our higher selves. Pretty wild, right?
Definitely makes you think about emotions in a whole new way.
Mm.
But before we get too deep into that, maybe we should define what we even mean by higher self. It's one of those terms you hear a lot, but what does it actually refer to?
Yeah, for sure. And I gotta admit, it does sound kind of, well, mystical, maybe even a little abstract. So, like, what is this higher self, and how is it different from, just our regular selves?
So the book pulls from a few different traditions to define the higher self. For instance, in theosophy, they call it Atma, which is described as like this unbroken ray of the universe, the one self.
Oh, okay. So, like, this pure universal part of us.
Exactly. And it's interesting. Mahayana Buddhism, a tradition that started in India, also talks about a greater self, one that's beyond our individual ego. And what both of these traditions are getting at is this idea that there's a part of us that's, well, connected to something way bigger than what we're aware of in our everyday lives.
Okay, so if this higher self is so, like, wise and vast, why don't we always feel connected to it? Why do we sometimes make choices that seem to go against, well, everything?
Well, the book suggests that our higher selves communicate with us, mainly through feelings. It's like they send these vibrations, these subtle, energetic messages, and then our physical minds, they kind of translate that into emotions. And sometimes those emotions, they feel good, expansive. Other times they feel, well, a bit more constricted, what we call negative.
So you're saying that, like, even the not-so-fun feelings, those are messages from our higher selves. I don't know if that makes me feel better about having them. I mean, if our higher selves are supposed to be, like, blissful beings, why would they send us negative feelings in the first place?
That's a great question, and it's important to remember the book emphasizes that the higher self itself, it doesn't experience these lower vibrations. It's always in this state of, well, joy and bliss.
So where do the negative emotions come from then?
Think of them as signals, almost like alarm bells, letting you know you've kind of strayed from the path, the one that's most in line with your soul's purpose.
Oh, okay, like our internal GPS, letting us know we missed a turn, recalculating route.
Exactly. And just like those GPS alerts, it's usually a good idea to listen. These negative emotions, they're trying to steer us back to, well, to a state of alignment, back to that joy that the book keeps talking about.
Okay, that actually makes sense. But I'm still wondering about this soul's journey that the book mentions. Is it like a literal map we're following? Is there a right way and a wrong way to go?
It's more like, think of it as an adventure, a never-ending journey of like evolution, and expansion. The book emphasizes that your soul, it's always on this journey, constantly experiencing joy and learning how to like better manifest what it wants.
Wait, so no map, no chance of making a wrong turn?
Not according to the source. No errors, just experiences. Yeah. Each one, even the tough ones, they're all part of the soul's ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Which is reunion with the Creator.
Whoa, okay, that's pretty huge. Takes the pressure off a bit, knowing that every single experience, even the really hard ones, are moving us towards something bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. And it all ties back to that idea of the soul's journey being, well, fundamentally about joy. We're here to learn, to grow, but also to experience the pure bliss of being alive. Have you ever had those moments where you felt deeply connected to something bigger than yourself, like you're part of something truly magnificent?
Definitely. Those moments of awe, where you feel connected to everything, they're pretty amazing. Definitely feel like a glimpse into something beyond, my normal awareness.
Exactly. And I think those experiences, they offer a taste of that vast eternal essence that's, well, bigger than just our individual lives, what we call the soul.
Okay, this is all so fascinating, but let's get back to like practical stuff for a minute. The book talks about listening to our higher selves through our feelings. Yeah. But how do we actually do that? Feelings can be, well, confusing sometimes. How do we know which ones to trust?
That's where self-awareness comes in. The key is learning to observe your emotions without judgment. Pay attention to how different things make you feel, different experiences, people, choices. Do you feel like expanded, excited, or do you feel kind of constricted, drained? Those feelings, they're your internal compass guiding you towards or away from your soul's path.
It's like that saying, follow your bliss, but it sounds like it's about more than just chasing, pleasure. It's about tuning into those deeper feelings that tell us we're on the right track, that we're aligned with our true selves.
Exactly. And the book really stresses this takes self-love and care. We got to listen to our feelings with the same compassion and attention that we'd give to someone we love.
I had this experience a while back. I was facing a pretty big career decision, and logically one option seemed like the obvious choice, but something just didn't feel right. It took me a while to really acknowledge that feeling, but once I did, I knew I had to trust it, trust my gut. Yeah. Well, it turned out to be the best decision ever. That other path, it would have led me down a road that, well, it wasn't really aligned with my values and goals. Looking back, I can see that uncomfortable feeling. It was actually a message from my higher self, steering me towards a path that was, well, more in line with my soul's purpose.
That's a perfect example of how listening to those subtle feelings, those whispers from your higher self can lead you to really unexpected and fulfilling outcomes. Mm-hmm. It's not always easy, especially when those feelings kind of go against, well, logic or what society tells you to do.
Definitely not. But it sounds like the more we practice tuning in, the clearer those messages become.
Absolutely. And that's really the key to navigating this journey of self-discovery.
Okay, so we've been talking about the higher self, but the book also mentions a difference between the higher self and the soul. What's the distinction? They seem pretty well intertwined.
Think of it like this. Your higher self, it's like the ambassador of your soul in this lifetime, represents the most evolved parts of your consciousness, guiding you towards, well, what your soul wants for this specific life. But the soul is that vast eternal essence that spans across lifetimes, carrying like the wisdom and experiences of all your past and future selves.
So if the soul is like this limitless ocean, the higher self is like the wave that's cresting right now, carrying the energy and intention of the ocean in that moment.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And just like a wave, it eventually goes back to the ocean. Our higher selves, they eventually merge back into the vastness of our souls, carrying with them, all the lessons and growth we've gained in this lifetime.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot here. The higher self, the soul, and this idea that our emotions are like a language we can use to talk to our higher selves. But I bet our listeners are wondering the same thing I am right now. How do we actually connect with our higher selves? It all sounds great in theory, but how do we make it real?
Well, that's what we'll be getting into in the next part of this deep dive. There are some very specific practices and techniques that can help us strengthen that connection and tap into the wisdom and guidance of our higher selves.
Sounds good to me. Let's take a moment to let all this sink in. I know I have a lot to think about. And when we come back, we'll explore those practical tips for connecting with your higher self and aligning with your soul's purpose. See you in a bit.
Okay, we're back. And I'm still processing this whole higher self thing. It's a lot,
It is, but I think that's what makes it so intriguing. It really pushes us to rethink who we are and what we're truly capable of. For sure. And speaking of expanding our understanding, the book also gets into this whole concept of spirit, which it's not just some, vague idea. It's actually connected to something very real, very tangible, electromagnetism.
Right. The book proposes that spirit is linked to this collective consciousness.
Yeah.
This field of energy that connects us all. And it describes this field as like a physiological and electrical phenomenon, literally the light of human consciousness and the world that we live in.
Okay, so if spirit is like this ocean of energy, how do we tap into it? Is it like, I don't know, plugging into an electrical socket?
Not quite. Yeah. But the idea is we can strengthen our connection to this field, this ocean of energy by raising our own vibrations. The source suggests that feelings of excitement, of service to others, and just overall positivity, they create a stronger link. And they allow us to resonate more harmoniously with all beings.
So it's about cultivating those positive, expansive emotions we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. The source even suggests that this connection to the collective consciousness can even lead to, telepathic experiences.
Wait, telepathy, like reading each other's minds. That sounds a little, a little far out even for this deep dive.
Well, the book actually uses the term telepathy, emphasizing that this connection, it's activated through Through love and compassion, through like feeling into the emotions and experiences of others. It's less about, knowing specific thoughts and more about tapping into that deep sense of interconnectedness, the one that allows for a kind of intuitive communication.
So it's more like a heart-to-heart connection than a mind-to-mind connection.
That's a good way to put it. And the book, it connects this concept to, the idea of the Holy Spirit or world spirit, suggesting that telepathy is a way of tapping into that universal consciousness that unites us all.
Okay, so we've got this interconnected web of energy and vibrations with our higher selves, our souls, and this concept of spirit all kind of intertwined. It's a lot to take in, but it's pretty amazing.
It is. And the source, it doesn't stop there. It goes on to introduce what it calls the 7 pillars of creation, which are presented as like the fundamental principles that underpin, well, the entire universe.
7 pillars of creation. Sounds almost biblical. What are these pillars and why are they so important?
These pillars are love, truth, fairness, knowledge, respect, honor, and logic. Each one represents a quality or a virtue that contributes to a harmonious and fulfilling existence, both individually and collectively.
Okay, I can see how those are all, important principles, but I'm curious, how do they relate to like our personal growth and development?
Well, the source makes this really fascinating connection between each pillar and what it calls a corresponding human superpower.
Superpowers. Now we're talking.
Right. So, for example, love, like we were discussing earlier, it creates this sense of freedom, and security. And this in turn activates the superpower of inner strength, allowing us to overcome challenges with resilience and confidence.
So it's like love is the fuel that powers our ability to face adversity.
Exactly. And each pillar has its own unique superpower that it activates within us. Yeah. Truth, it fosters trust and integrity, which leads to the superpower of rationality, the ability to make sound judgments and decisions. Fairness promotes balance and understanding, activating the superpower of intellect, allowing us to think critically and creatively solve problems and so on.
Okay, this is pretty mind-blowing. It's like we have these latent superpowers just waiting to be unlocked. So how do we actually cultivate these pillars in our lives?
The source, it offers some practical guidance on that too. For example, to cultivate love, it suggests practices like caring for others, being selfless, and learning to accept imperfections. To cultivate truth, it emphasizes being honest with ourselves and with others, even when it's uncomfortable, questioning our own beliefs and assumptions, and seeking out diverse perspectives to challenge our own biases.
That's a good reminder, especially these days when it can be so hard to tell what's true and what's not.
Absolutely, and each pillar has its own set of practices and principles that we can use to strengthen it within ourselves. The key is to approach this as an ongoing process, of self-discovery and growth.
I like that. It's not about, achieving some perfect state, but about continuously striving to embody these qualities in our lives.
Exactly. And as we do that, we naturally start to unlock those superpowers within us.
So we've got these pillars, these superpowers, but the book also, it emphasizes the importance of self-mastery. What exactly does that mean in this context?
Self-mastery in this context, it's not about suppressing our emotions or forcing ourselves to conform to some rigid ideal. It's about understanding and integrating all aspects of ourselves, both the light and the shadow, and learning to use our energy wisely. It's about becoming the conscious creators of our own reality.
That sounds like a pretty tall order. Where do we even begin?
Well, that's what we'll explore in the next section. The source goes on to offer some specific techniques and practices that can help us cultivate self-awareness, develop our inner strengths and align with our highest potential.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. Let's take a short pause to gather our thoughts and then dive into those practical tips for self-mastery. See you in a bit. Okay, so we're back and ready to get into these techniques for self-mastery.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so the recap, we've been talking about these 7 pillars of creation, love, truth, fairness, knowledge, respect, honor, and logic. And how each one of those connects to a specific human superpower. It's like a blueprint for personal growth and empowerment.
It is, and what I find so compelling about this whole framework is it connects these kind of abstract principles
Yeah.
to qualities that we can actually cultivate. It's not just about understanding them intellectually, but about embodying them in our everyday lives.
Exactly. So let's start with the pillar of love. We talk about how it creates that sense of freedom, reduces anxiety, and activates the superpower of inner strength. But how do we actually cultivate more love in our lives? It's not always easy, especially when we're faced with, challenges, difficult people.
That's true, but the source offers some really practical suggestions. For example, it emphasizes the importance of self-love, like caring for ourselves, nurturing our own well-being. That's essential for cultivating love in all areas of our lives.
Right. You can't pour from an empty cup, right?
Exactly. And then there's the practice of being selfless. Extending kindness and compassion to others, even those who might not deserve it. Now, this doesn't mean being a doormat or letting people take advantage of us, but it does mean choosing to respond with love rather than reacting with anger or resentment.
Yeah, that's a tough one, but I can see how it would ultimately create more peace, more harmony in our lives.
Definitely. And finally, the source emphasizes the importance of accepting imperfections, both in ourselves and in others. It's about recognizing that we're all on a journey. We're all going to make mistakes, and it's through those mistakes that we learn and we grow.
Okay, so love is about self-care, selflessness, and acceptance. That's a pretty powerful combination.
It is. And when we cultivate love in our lives, we naturally tap into that superpower of inner strength, which allows us to face challenges with courage, resilience, and a deep sense of knowing that we're not alone.
Right. So that leads us to the next pillar, truth, which activates the superpower of rationality. And this one seems especially important, in today's world where we're bombarded with so much information from so many different sources.
It is. And the source reminds us that truth isn't just about, gathering information. It's about discerning what's true for us individually. It's about aligning our thoughts, our beliefs, and our actions with what resonates deeply within our own hearts and minds.
So it's about developing our own inner compass rather than just blindly following the crowd.
Exactly. And the source suggests practices like being honest with ourselves and with others, even when it's uncomfortable, questioning our own beliefs and assumptions and seeking out, diverse perspectives to challenge our own biases.
That's a great point. It's so easy to get stuck in our own echo chambers, surrounded by people who disagree with us. But true growth, it often comes from stepping outside of our comfort zones and exposing ourselves to different viewpoints.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when we do that, we cultivate the superpower of rationality, which allows us to see through illusions, make sound decisions, and just navigate life with greater clarity and wisdom.
Right. Okay. So we've covered love and truth. Now let's move on to fairness, which the source links to the superpower of intellect. I'm curious how those two relate to each other.
Well, fairness is about balance, right? It's about treating ourselves and others with respect and understanding. And when we cultivate fairness in our lives, we actually enhance our ability to think critically, to weigh different perspectives, and to make decisions that are just and equitable.
So it's like fairness, it sharpens our minds and helps us to see the bigger picture.
Exactly. It allows us to move beyond our own self-interest and consider the well-being of all involved.
That makes sense. So how do we cultivate fairness in a world that often feels so unfair?
Well, the source suggests practices like practicing empathy, putting ourselves in other people's shoes, challenging our own biases, and advocating for justice and equality whenever possible. It's about creating a more balanced and harmonious world, both internally and externally.
Okay, good stuff. On to knowledge, which activates the superpower of self-discipline. This one seems pretty straightforward.
It does, but it's important to remember that knowledge without action is useless, right? The source emphasizes that true knowledge is about embodiment. It's about taking what we learn and applying it to our lives.
So it's not enough to just, read books or listen to podcasts. We have to actually do something with the information that we gather.
Exactly. And that's where self-discipline comes in. It's the ability to set goals, create habits, and stay committed to our own growth, even when it's challenging. It's about mastering our minds and our actions so that we can live in alignment with our highest values.
Okay, I can definitely see the connection there. Now let's talk about respect, which the source links to the superpower of self-control.
Respect is about honoring the inherent worth in ourselves and in others. It's about setting, healthy boundaries and making choices that are aligned with our values. And when we cultivate respect, we naturally develop greater self-control. We're less likely to engage in self-destructive behaviors or allow others to disrespect us.
So respect, it gives us the strength to stand up for ourselves and what we believe in.
Exactly. It's about knowing our own worth and demanding that others recognize it as well.
Okay, makes sense. On to honor, which the source connects to the superpower of self-achievement.
Honor is about integrity. It's about living in accordance with our highest principles. And when we live with honor, we naturally attract opportunities for success and fulfillment. We become magnetic to the people and the experiences that are aligned with our soul's purpose.
So honor is like a guiding light that illuminates our path to success.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it's important to remember that self-achievement, it isn't just about external accomplishments. It's about living a life that we can be proud of, a life that reflects our deepest values and aspirations.
Absolutely. And finally, we have logic, which the source links to the superpower of fearlessness.
Logic is about using our minds to understand the world around us. It's about seeing through illusions and recognizing the true nature of reality. And when we cultivate logic, we develop the superpower of fearlessness, because, well, we're no longer swayed by irrational thoughts or emotions. We can face challenges with a calm and clear mind, knowing that we have the capacity to find solutions.
So logic helps us to deconstruct our fears and see them for what they are, which is often just thoughts in our minds, not reflections of reality.
Exactly. And when we can see through our fears, we're free to act with courage and determination, even in the face of uncertainty.
Wow, this whole framework of pillars and superpowers it's incredibly inspiring. It gives us like a roadmap for cultivating these positive qualities within ourselves and unlocking our full potential.
It does, and it reminds us that we're not limited by our circumstances. We have the power to shape our own reality, to choose the kind of person we want to be, and to create a life that's filled with purpose and joy and meaning.
Absolutely. And I think that's a perfect place to wrap up our deep dive into awakening wisdom, higher self, spirit, and creation's pillars. We've covered so much ground today.
Yeah.
From the nature of the higher self and the soul to the power of spirit and the 7 pillars of creation. It's been quite a journey.
It has, and I hope you're feeling as inspired as I am to continue exploring these ideas and applying them in your own life.
Absolutely. And remember, the journey of self-discovery, it's ongoing. There's always more to learn, more to explore, and more to experience. But with the wisdom and the insights that we've gained from these sources, we're well equipped to navigate the path with clarity and courage and a sense of wonder.
And as a final thought to ponder, if your soul is on this eternal journey, constantly evolving and expanding, what choices can you make in this lifetime to align with its highest potential?
That's a powerful question to leave you with, and we encourage you to continue reflecting on these ideas and to share your insights with us. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the nature of wisdom, the higher self, and then the very pillars of creation. Until next time, keep seeking, keep growing, and keep shining your light.